Normal conditions are expected by 8:15 this evening. In Buckinghamshire, congestion persists on the A404 northbound. And on the trains, major disruptions affect services between Newcastle and Darlington. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the big one. Your chance to win a whopping £85,000 in tax-free cash. The largest cash prize we've given away to date. That's like over £7,000 a month extra in your bank account each month for 12 whole months. That's a year of yes. Yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to shopping trips, yes to home improvements. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Very, very good evening to you and welcome to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Dawn. We've got an action-packed show and here's what's coming up tonight.
The case of the former MEP Nathan Gill has revealed the threat our democracy faces today.
Here we go. Has the Labour Party taken the dark arts to a whole new level? The government today has announced plans for a foreign interference review. What many have suspected is a thinly veiled attack on opinion poll leaders, Reform UK. And meanwhile,
a little while you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth. Literally, they put words in my mouth.
Gloves are off. Donald Trump has officially begun legal proceedings against the BBC over its doctoring of his January the 6th speech, and it could cost them a cool $10 billion. And in other news tonight,
we declare the formation of the Chagosian government in exile.
What a legend. Exiled Chagosians have formed their own government as part of a last-ditch effort to save the island. I'll be joined by the newly elected interim First Minister, Misli Mandarin, in just a moment's time. And finally, that doesn't get the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, you must be dead. We have an update on the campaign to save the last ever Dambuster bomber, the EZLC, which was featured on this show just last month. We've got an absolute stonker of a show. Stay tuned, but first is your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. UK police are stepping up armed patrols on the transport network and in crowded places as they warn of an increased terror risk over the festive period. Senior officers from counter-terror policing and the British Transport Police have issued a joint call for vigilance following the recent attacks targeting the Jewish community in Manchester and Australia, warning that mass gatherings over the Christmas and the New Year period remain an attractive target for terrorists. That's as new details are emerging about the gunman behind the massacre in Sydney. Indian police say 50-year-old Sajid Akram was originally from the southern city of Hyderabad and had limited contact with family there. Authorities in India say relatives were unaware of any radical beliefs or activities as Australian police continue to examine possible overseas links. Detectives are investigating claims the two gunmen travelled to the Philippines weeks before the attack for what's been described as military-style training. 15 people were killed in Sunday's shooting. 9 are in a critical condition. The Prime Minister says the attack appears to have been motivated by Islamic State ideology. Donald Trump says he's suing the BBC, launching a multi-billion-dollar legal action over what he calls a doctored edit of his January the 6th speech. The US president says a Panorama documentary falsely made it appear he called for violence at the Capitol, accusing the broadcaster of defamation and misleading editing. The BBC apologised for giving a mistaken impression, but insists there's no basis for a defamation claim. In a statement, a spokesperson said the broadcaster will defend the case. UK unemployment has risen to 5.1%, its highest level since early of 2021. The ONS says young people are being hit the hardest, with unemployment among 18 to 24-year-olds jumping by 85,000. The driver who ploughed into crowds at Liverpool's Premier League victory parade has been jailed for 21 years and 6 months. Paul Doyle injured 134 supporters after driving his car into fans. The court heard how 54-year-old lost his temper and acted in what a judge called inexplicable fury. Dashcam footage showed supporters thrown onto the bonnet and dragged beneath the car as Doyle shouted abuse and accelerated through closed streets. Doyle pleaded guilty to 31 offences, including attempting to cause grievous bodily harm to a 6-month-old baby. And in sport, Paris Saint-Germain have been ordered to pay former striker Kylian Mbappe £52.5 million in unpaid salary and bonuses by a French court. Mbappe had been seeking £231 million from his former club after the long-running dispute reached a Paris court in November. The European champions were countersuing the France captain for £211 million. The 26-year-old claimed the 9-figure sum as damages in response to a contract dispute and ill treatment by the club. However, he was awarded just over a fifth of that amount in court today. The court recognised that PSG had failed to pay 3 months of his salary between April and June last year, as well as an ethics bonus and a signing bonus under his contract. It is believed the majority of the money awarded to Mbappe was bonuses rather than his salary. And those are the latest headlines. For now, more in an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, hello and welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Dorden. Now, we're expecting to speak to Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, live from the Palace of Westminster, fresh from the second round of budget votes. But first, it's getting on for nearly an entire year now since Reform UK began consistently leading the opinion polls, with many projecting an outright majority for Nigel Farage's party at the next general election. While that is a long way off yet, one thing seems to be clear. The establishment will stop at absolutely nothing to help prevent a reform government. First, they started with this.
Nigel Farage is fawning over Putin. That's not patriotism. That is not what working people need.
Well, first Putin, and then they moved on to calling Nigel Farage racist.
Well, I do think that is a racist policy.
I believe that policy is racist.
It is racist.
So first Putin, then racism. And in recent weeks, we've seen the incessant fixation on what Nigel Farage may or may not have said 50 years ago at school. But today, we saw the last chapter of what many have called the dark art strategy.
The case of the former MEP Nathan Gill has revealed the threat our democracy faces today. And I know it has caused deep concern right across the House. Events have shown that we need to consider whether our firewall is enough. The independent review will look at this, focusing in particular on the effectiveness of our broader political finance laws, on current checks and balances within political regulation, for identifying and mitigating foreign interference, on safeguards against illicit funding streams, including cryptocurrencies, and on the rules governing the constitution and regulation of parties and the Electoral Commission's enforcement power.
Yes, with all of those previous attacks simply failing to land the glove on Nigel Farage's chin, today, as if by coincidence, the Labour government has now announced an investigation into foreign interference in British politics, taking a swipe at Reform's former leader in Wales momentarily, Nathan Gill, who was jailed, of course, for 10 years for pro-Russian bribery, while an MEP for UKIP. But will this investigation be turned into a Reform UK witch hunt? I'm joined now in the studio by the broadcaster and Reform UK defector, that's Tim Montgomery, as well as my panel tonight, the former Conservative MP and Minister, Sir Ranald J. Wardener, and of course the journalist and former press secretary to Paddy Ashdown, Joe Phillips. Welcome to you all. Tim Montgomery, I'm going to start with you. Presumably you think this is not an investigation into all of politics, but an attack on Reform UK alone.
Well, look, if there was a real, genuine investigation into foreign interference in British politics, everything would be covered. So David Lammy, for example, and I'm not accusing him of anything in particular, but before the election, David Lammy routinely met Chinese officials. What were those meetings about? Because what we do know is since the election, the British government has become much warmer to China. We know about the Chinese embassy issue, etc. I could go on. I won't for the moment, Martin, although if you invite me to, I will. But the issue for me is, why did Steve Reid, we've just seen him in Parliament, but I saw a video of him released for social media. All he talked about was reform and the Nathan Gill issue. What Nathan Gill did was indefensible. Anyone who has seen that example would be ashamed of it. He had no influence on Reform's policy recently, but what he did was disgraceful. What Labour are now doing is trying to turn this issue into a political football. And I don't know if you've noticed also today, Labour have announced that basically they think that all people who stand in by-elections for Labour Party should be women. Now, is that at all to do with stopping Andy Burnham challenging Labour and Keir Starmer for the leadership? Of course it is. What we are seeing, if you see the pattern of postponing elections recently in places like Essex, is an attempt to deny Reform the opportunity that the British people want it to have. This is politics, pure and simple.
Another thing that's leapt to my attention today, Tim Montgomery, is the publication of this review will coincidentally perhaps fall just shy of the electoral cycle for those elections in the Welsh Senedd, in Holyrood and the local elections. Now, the Labour Party...
Just a coincidence, Martin, of course.
Now, Steve Reid is maintaining this is politically neutral, it's independent, and will work to remove the stain of foreign interference and money across all parties. But it does seem to be levelled against Reform mainly.
And I'll ask your other panellists, honestly, because I respect both of them as politically serious people. This is clearly a political witch hunt. And I think if it was a broad inquiry into all foreign intervention in British politics, I think all of us would say maybe there's a need for it. But this is clearly Reform directed. And I would ask people of good political conscience to condemn it, because that's what this is.
Tim Montgomery, Joe Phillips's eyebrow arched in a manner which means, Joe, over to you.
Well, I think, get over yourselves, chaps. What Nathan Gill did was appalling, and Nigel and other members of Reform, including you, Tim, have quite rightly distanced yourself from him and called him out for what he was, which was a traitor to this country.
Exactly the right word.
But I think there are questions about how he was got at, and those are the things that need to be investigated in the same way as the collapsed Chinese spy scandal, which, there are a whole load of questions about. There are questions about how our former Foreign Secretary, one Mr Boris Johnson, was able to shrug off his security detail and his aides in 2018 to go and attend a party with Lebedev, former KGB agent, whose son is now in the House of Lords and, as far as I know, has contributed absolutely nothing to public debate or... So I don't think Reform does itself any favours by saying this is about us. It's about every party, and it should
Do you really believe that?
Yes, I do.
Because
I absolutely
I think
do.
this is... You saw the Steve Reeve video, though. He only talked about one party. He talked about reform. He talked about Nigel Farage. It all seemed to be about... Look, I would trust you to run this inquiry. I think you would do a broad-based inquiry. But what was clearly just specified for us today was an inquiry focused on reform.
Well, I don't think that's what it will be. And to my shame, I can't remember the person who's been appointed to chair it, but it is somebody quite sensible.
Philip Rycroft.
That's right, Philip Rycroft. Yes, thank you, Ranil. So, you know, I think we have to wait and see. There are a lot of concerns about corruption and interference in politics, and it's lobbying, it's funding, and I think the other thing is about social media, which is much harder to get to the bottom of. But if we want people to have faith in politics, then we need to have transparency and accountability.
Ranil, your eyebrow arched there at the mention of Boris Johnson, but I also want to put a point to you that the timing of these attacks, investigations, do seem to be politically motivated. Cast your mind back to the electoral cycle of 2019, the MEP elections. I stood as a candidate and the Electoral Commission performed a raid on the Brexit Party officers during an electoral cycle, and that was instigated by a certain Gordon Brown. The timing, the weaponisation, surely this does seem to be focused on derailing Nigel Farage.
So I'd say three things. First, timing, I agree with you. You don't want proper investigations, proper inquiries to be drawn into the political fray. So to announce anything, the results of any such inquiry during or in the run-up to, in the very short run-up to a PERDA period ahead of a local election, that would be wrong. That wouldn't actually result, I think, in what people in this country would want, because people do want politics to be cleaned up, and not just on this. I think the broader-based inquiry actually should cover things like party funding, and it should cover the unions and all the stuff that Labour gets without any scrutiny at all. So, you know, if you want to have a proper inquiry about money and politics, you'd want to do all of that. Yeah. But I think the third thing here is that this is Starmer taking the Biden playbook. How well that turned out for Biden, didn't we? So I think, you know, the Labour Party, this government, need to be very careful what they do. I have great, you know, sympathy, I think we all do, with saying that anyone who behaves in a treasonous way should be absolutely prosecuted. And I don't think anyone disagrees on this panel, or indeed in Parliament across the House. But dealing with this...
Right. I mean, it does need to be broadened out. And lobbying is really important. You know, how many weeks, well, how often do we see another sting of another MP duped into saying, I will ask questions on your behalf, you know, I only cost this much per day. And it goes into things like gifts, you know, whether that's gifts in kind or whatever, which has, you know, caused Keir Starmer a lot of problems. It needs to be broader. And maybe what they need to do is to just say that it will report after the election. I mean, frankly, if they can turn their attention to this quickly, I'd rather they did something on social care.
Joe Phillips, I think you're exactly right. Ranil, superb. Tim Montgomery, thanks for your company tonight in the studio. Thank you to you all. Now, coming up in just a moment's time...
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth. Literally, they put words in my mouth.
Yes, Donald Trump has officially now begun legal proceedings against the BBC over its doctoring of his January 6th speech, and it could cost them a cool $10 billion. That's next.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Now, just a reminder, we're waiting to hear from Nigel Farage in Parliament to get his reaction to this investigation into political money. But before that, another astonishing development in today's news. US President Donald Trump has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC over the broadcaster published misleadingly edited clips of his January 6th speech in its Panorama programme. And here he was making that announcement.
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth, literally. They put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something. So we'll be bringing that lawsuit. A lot of people are asking, when are you bringing that lawsuit? Even the media can't believe that one. They actually put terrible words in my mouth having to do with January 6th that I didn't say.
Well, let's have a lively discussion now in the studio. I'm joined by my panel tonight, the former Conservative MP and the Minister, Sir Ranil Jayawardena, and of course the journalist and former Press Secretary to Paddy Ashdown, Joe Phillips. Joe, not for the first time tonight, if you had your head in your hands there. Tell us why you think this lawsuit from Donald Trump is preposterous.
It's utterly ridiculous. For a start, nobody saw. I mean, I'm not defending the BBC, Martin. It was an appalling error of judgment and it was completely unnecessary. You know, there was no need to do that, and all they needed to do was to put a flash in, like we've just seen those two clips of Keir Starmer and David Lammy. It's really easy to show that they didn't run concurrently. First of all, you've got a president who said, I never said those words, they made it up, it's AI, like we're supposed to believe that wasn't even him. We also have the idea that nobody in America watched it. It was not available on BBC iPlayer. It wasn't broadcast in America. I mean, there might be some, 3 people in Florida who could do it through a VPN or something like that. We've seen the Director General, Tim Davie, resign. We've seen the Head of News, Deborah Turness, resign. And there's been an apology. I think it's utterly ridiculous. I think Trump is bonkers.
OK, Sir Ranil, let's get your take before I think I'm going to disagree with both of you.
Yeah, so look, I mean, I share much common cause with Joe on this one. So, often we disagree, but on this, I do think there is a case for licence fee payers. Many GB News viewers, their money being spent to settle a claim from the President of the United States, a very rich man himself. And, that's what we should remember, that licence fees will be going to this.
That won't happen. Well, but the BBC have an insurance policy,
which they pay for.
It won't be licence payers that pay this money. If any money does change hands, which I think it won't.
Well, they pay for the insurance, and insurance premiums go up when you claim on them. So yes, licence fee payers will be paying for this one way or other. But here's the other thing. As Joe said, heads have rolled. The Director General, Director of News. Perhaps the chairman of the BBC ought to consider his position too. But I think the fact is the BBC has taken action, and it is right, I think, that everyone moves on.
So I think this isn't about winning. It's about the process being the punishment. It's about torpedoing the BBC's pomposity to show that any broadcaster on the planet, if you're going to start fiddling around, changing the running order, putting things out of context and deliberately trying to damage a political figure during an electoral cycle. You're going to pay big. And here's another point. The entire editorial process could be thrown out to the open. Donald Trump could demand that the entire chain of command, every email, not just in this, but the anti-Semitism stuff, the trans ideology stuff, the net zero stuff could all be thrown to the open, and many, many more heads could roll. The BBC is being used as a whipping boy to make an examples of every other media channel out there. That's why I think this case is a good thing to do.
Well, he is just a big bully and he is behaving in a most ridiculous, petulant way. He doesn't need the money, as Ranald says.
He didn't punch first, the BBC did.
The BBC have made a mistake for which they have apologised, and there were many, many faults which we have discussed ad nauseum on this programme, that they should have dealt with it when it was first raised as an issue. They didn't do that, and Tim Davie and Deborah Turnis have paid the price by, as Ranald said, their heads have rolled, and it will have focused attention on the BBC. There are many things wrong with the BBC. It is not perfect, but it is a damn sight better than most of what is going on around the world. It tries its best to be balanced.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I absolutely
A lot of people
do.
don't.
Well, a lot of people might not, Martin, but, you know, a lot of people will watch GB News and think that everything that GB News says is truth, even though sometimes it is not always as balanced as it might be if it was the BBC.
But you don't have to pay for it compulsorily through a licence fee. And you don't get to jail if you don't pay for it if you're a pensioner.
But that's
There's
why,
a huge difference.
But the government today have unveiled the Green Paper, which is a 12-week consultation on the future of the BBC, which includes funding, and that includes the licence fee and whether or not that includes everything, or whether it goes behind a paywall, or whether there's advertising. So, you know, there's a whole debate going on. The BBC, like the monarchy, is one of the most important weapons in our soft diplomacy.
Maybe its time has expired. That remains to be seen. Thank you very much. Now, BBC spokesperson has told GB News this. As we've made clear previously, we'll be defending this case. We're not going to make further comments on ongoing legal proceedings. Another huge story in Parliament today. After being grilled by members of Parliament yesterday, the Prime Minister made this astonishing admission.
Is the Prime Minister aware that some farmers who have terminal diagnosis now are actively planning to expedite their own deaths so they hit before April? Is he aware of that?
I've had discussions with a number of individuals who've drawn all manner of things to my attention.
Said with all the heart there of a Dalek. That's what a lot of people are thinking. Despite that admission, the Prime Minister has insisted his government will push ahead with these devastating inheritance tax reforms. And joining me now to discuss this is the farmer, the campaigner, Ollie Harrison. Ollie, welcome to the show. A lot of people were gobsmacked yesterday that the Prime Minister seems to be aware of this in the way that he might be aware, I don't know, of a parking ticket.
It just made a lot of people angry. I mean, I think he used the words "a necessary consequence." So when Alistair Carmichael came in after Cat and said similar things, you know, we've heard different reports of farmers taking their lives. And he went, well, we've looked at the policy. It only affects a quarter of farms, which we know is absolute rubbish. It's just a blatant lie. His own DEFRA department told him this a few days later. And then goes, yeah, it's a necessary consequence. You know, it's a regime. I didn't think I'd live in a country where farmers are dying for the land, for someone to take the land. It's just bonkers.
Ollie Harrison, I had a farmer in the studio, a pal of yours, Dan Willis. He was telling me that his mother is contemplating ending her life early to avoid paying inheritance tax and to pass the farm on. This isn't process. This isn't bureaucracy. It's humanity. People think it's cruel.
Yeah, if someone's worked their whole life to build a business, it doesn't have to be a farm. It can just be a business, and their motivation is to provide for the next generation and their children. You know, they've done it for the kids, and then it can be ripped away on their deathbed, grave robbed. You know, there's no doubt about it. Then if they know that they, by not being around after April, can stop this and not have wasted a lifetime, you can see why. And this is it's barbaric what's being proposed. And, we've asked for a pause. We've asked for it to be, brought in after 7 years to give people time to plan. We've given them another option that will actually generate them more income, and they just won't go with it. I mean, the guy must be dead behind the eyes. I don't get it. I mean, someone said to me yesterday, one of the MPs actually that had been in that debate, you might as well debate with the talking clock. There's just no emotion with him, is there at all?
OK, Ollie Harrison, thank you very much for joining us. We're short on time. We have to leave it there. Thanks for your opinion. Let's get some reaction from my panel, Serrano and Joe. Joe, let's come to you first. Farming is in your family too. How do you react to this? It seems to be detached from emotion.
Well, I think Keir Starmer's reaction was just unbelievable. I mean, it just beggars belief that anybody could be so unempathetic. I just find it staggering. We're talking about £1 million, which of course sounds like a lot of money. It wouldn't buy you a house in North London. And £1 million, if you take in a farmhouse and land and, barns and outbuildings and other assets that you would have, it's nothing. It's nothing. I'm sure, if you have Ollie Harrison on again, ask him how many hours a week he works, like most farmers, and how much that works out at per hour. It is absolutely appalling, and this government have been quick to do U-turns when they've been lobbied on other things like benefit reform. This is a disgrace.
My guest earlier on, Serrano, told me that he's facing a £1.6 million inheritance tax bill for a business that makes £18,000 profit a year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of farming businesses, farming families, they might be asset rich, but they're cash poor. The income, the yield on the land that they might own is actually relatively small. And that's why this is so painful. It's not like another business that you would get out there. These are people who feed this country. They're people who curate our countryside. The countryside doesn't just look the way it does because it always has. It looks the way it does. It looks so wonderful because our farmers look after it. And if we decimate this industry, if we hand it over to big US companies who'll buy it all out, then we're going to lose something that's very precious.
OK, thank you very much to you, Ollie. Thank you to you, Rano. Thank you to you, Joe. Now, coming up in just a moment's time.
We declare the formation of the Chagosian government in exile.
That's right, exiled Chagosians have formed their own government as part of a last-ditch effort to try and save the island. I'll be joined in the studio by the newly elected interim First Minister, Mizzy Mandarin, in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, very good evening to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, after what has been a largely fine day for many of us, things are set to change through the next 24 hours, with some wet weather going to arrive in time for tomorrow. That's all due to a weather system that's currently out towards the west of us. But before this, we have a ridge of high pressure, and so relatively quiet weather across us through large chunks of the night. As a result, we're going to have a lot of dry weather, yes, but also quite a lot of clear skies. And with that, we're going to see some mist and fog patches developing, particularly across central and eastern parts. They could be quite dense. Also worth noting that temperatures are going to drop a little bit lower than some recent nights, so a chillier start to the day tomorrow, could even be a touch of frost around. So first thing tomorrow, a chilly start, yes. Largely dry across central and southern parts of England and also across the east, but watch out for those fog patches. A different story towards the north and west, however. That front that I mentioned at this start, that will have spread its way in, and so we're going to see some fairly persistent and at times heavy rain across many places, and with all that wet weather, the winds will be strengthening as well. So a blustery, wet start to the day for most. Clinging on to the dry weather across the far east of England through much of the day. Elsewhere, it's going to be pretty wet at times. The highest rainfall totals likely to build up over parts of South Wales and southwest England. Dartmoor, for example, could see 40 to 60 millimetres, enough to cause some disruption. Temperatures on paper are a few degrees above average for the time of year, but with the unsettled weather, well, it's not going to feel particularly pleasant. Then as we go into Thursday, there's more rain set to push its way in, a swathe of even heavier rain coming in from the south-southwest. So watch out for that, as it could cause some more disruption with the ground already so saturated. Friday for many actually looks like a largely fine end to the week, but a more changeable pattern into the weekend. Bye-bye.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, Patrick Christie joins us now to preview an incredible story that he has on his show tonight. Patrick, got an astonishing exclusive. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin. Look, every single day now it appears that we are reporting on or reading about a sexual assault or rape, even a murder, when it comes to an asylum seeker or an illegal immigrant here in Britain. But what you very rarely hear about is the victim's story, the survivor's story. That changes tonight from 9 p.m. We've got an exclusive interview with a very brave survivor, Abby, who details the night her life changed forever at the hands of an Iranian asylum seeker who many people feel should not have ever been in the country. She was a victim of a sexual assault where she should have been safe in her hometown. He was supported by a Christian charity. The police made errors, it appears, and dropped him off at a property very close to her own as well. We're also going to hear from Abby's mum and a message to those in power. If this was your daughter, you'd be doing a bit more to stop the situation. All that and more, 9 to 11 p.m, Martin.
It's a fearless and brave exclusive. Patrick Christie tonight, exclusively 9 to 11. Patrick, well done. Now back to the studio. More than half a century after they were driven from their homelands, stripped of their islands and scattered across continents, the Chagosians have taken an absolutely extraordinary and unprecedented step. They formed a government in exile as a last stand to keep the Chagos Islands as British. Well, earlier today, the Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice indicated that Reform were considering recognising this government in exile. I'm delighted to present to you now the interim First Minister of the Chagosian exile government, Misley Mandarin, as well as my panel. Of course, that's still Surano Jayawardena and the journalist and former press secretary Paddy Ashdown, Joe Phillips. Misley Mandarin, welcome to the studio. It's an astonishing development, and it was in this very studio, in fact, you first said you would fight and you would die for your country. Now the interim leader.
Yes, thank you for having me, Martin, and all your GB News viewers. Yes, I must still stand by my word. I will die for my country to stay British. And I'm so proud my people choosing me to be the First Minister. And it is, I can't tell how much pride in me to do the fight. Now the fight begins in another stage now. Thank you so much.
Now, Mr. Mandarin, of course, you came here tonight. You also brought your extended Chagosian family. We think we've got a picture. Look at that. Good Magnificent. We've got a whole army of Chagosians there.
That's not his family, that's his cabinet.
OK, or a bit of both. But on a serious point, Misley, clearly you're the most passionate people. What are you hoping to achieve?
So the main important, that's where we're in this situation right now, is a military base, the UK and US military base. As Chagosian, as British Chagosian, we can secure that military base. So if you give the island to Mauritius, there's no guarantee to it with the influence of China in the Indian Ocean, in the Indo-Pacific. But us, as a government in exile, as a British overseas territory government, we're going back, we're going to secure that UK and US military base as British Chagosian, and we're under the sovereignty of the British and under the King Charles III.
Are you hopeful that the establishment will listen to you? You have the backing, I understand, of Reform UK. The Labour Party, though, they seem to be standing by their guns. They seem determined to, some people might say, surrender the Chagosian Islands.
So the Labour Party, they're accused about the certainty of the base, right, the legality of the base. if we give that to Mauritius, there's no any certainty. It will be the same thing because we're going to have to fight again as British to get back the island from Mauritius, but we don't want that. So the government better listen to us as British Chagosians, and we never give up. And I will say something in my language, in Creole French, Chagosien fort, Chagosien vivant. It means the Chagosian are strong and Chagosian are alive.
So, Rano, Joe Phillips, it's rousing stuff. You presumably in full support.
Well, I mean, we feel like we're old friends because we have seen you so much, but never this smart, First Minister.
Thank you.
So congratulations. No, I mean, you know, I applaud Misley and his colleagues, many of whom I've had the pleasure to meet here over the last few months. You know, they really are fighting for something that they believe in. And I think even last week when Nigel was here, we were talking about this muddle, that the reason the government seems to be going down this path is because of a UN report. And then last week there was another UN report basically saying, oh, hold on a minute, this isn't very good because you're depriving people like Misley of their human rights. So, you know, it would be sensible, wouldn't it, to just pause, have a conversation and rethink.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm very pleased Misley sort of confirmed the key point here for many viewers, which is the world is a dangerous place. And to give away a strategic military asset at this moment in time to an ally of China is a very bad decision. It's very concerning. It leads us back to the conversation we were having around the influence of the Chinese government in the current government today. And it's right that everyone, Chagosians, British citizens, all challenge it together. And I'm also delighted Misley confirmed that this government in exile that has been formed, has sprung out of nowhere, is absolutely committed to being a government as part of a British overseas territory and under the Crown, which is absolutely crucial.
So, First Minister Misley Mandarin, we know that the Labour Party watched this programme. If the Prime Minister was to listen to you now, what would be your message to Sir Keir Starmer?
I would say to Sir Keir Starmer, do the right thing. Protect British territory, protect British asset, protect British people. This is very, very important to us. And we are here. We did a government in exile. This is our last resort to find justice after half a century, because my ancestors were exiled as British, and we returned as British to protect the UK and US military base of Tico Garcia. And it says on my hat there, the freedom, the footprint of freedom, right? That's what we want to do. There, we want to be free on our island and protect the base.
Do you have an embassy? Would you like to get an HQ in London?
Yes, we want to do that because all the British overseas territory got their houses. You got like Gibraltar House, you got Falkland Island House. Why not buy a house? We need to have this. We've been put apart for so many times. And one thing again, we have to remember, we still got a court case, right? And even our island is so so important to us, but we can't be in. But we got many people who are helping us, and we do crowdfunding to finance the court case as well, while we're waiting for a judgment on the court case as well.
Misley, have you had any contact with the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper?
No, at all.
What,
no,
even now you're now a government...
Or the Commissioner.
Or the Commissioner.
No, not at all, but we hope so very soon.
Now you're a government in exile.
Yeah, we hope so very soon.
Yes. Presumably that gives you the right. And I'll never forget when you first came in to this studio and you talked so passionately, Misley, about how you fought for Queen and country.
Yeah.
You're prepared to pay the ultimate price for Queen and country as a British man.
Yeah.
And that spirit is very much alive in you now.
Still. And the first time we met, and I said, I will die for my country. And is that still stand, right, for my country to stay British. I know the British value. I learned it in the British Army. And all the kids, the Chagosian kids who were born in England, they learn British value. And we are proud Christian as well.
OK, well, the interim First Minister of the Chagosian exile government, Misley Mandarin, first of all, I'd like to shake your hand.
Thank you so
Secondly,
much.
very, very well done. Very impressive. You've scrubbed up pretty well there. Beautiful stuff. Merry Christmas. And
I do like the T-shirts.
I think we should all just wish this amazing piece of democratic uprising a huge round of applause.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. you very, very much for joining us in the studio. It's an absolute pleasure. And it's always just so lovely to see all your Chagosian British. Can we get that picture on screen again of the Chagosian army and the GB News green room? Let's gather up. Look at that. What a magnificent bunch. You'll never meet a more patriotic bunch of people in your entire life. The beautiful Chagosian family. Love to you all. Now, moving on. Coming up after the break. Now, that doesn't warm your spirits, you must be dead. We've got an update on the campaign to save the last Dambuster bomber. There it is, the wreck of the Easy Elsie, which was featured on the show just last month. You'll not want to miss it.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
If you're thinking of heading overseas for a holiday, well, you'll find plenty of fine weather in Greece and Cyprus, Italy too, but fairly showery with a keen northerly breeze for the Canary Islands and some heavy rain across eastern Spain. That's going to stick around for a couple of days. Meanwhile, ahead of another area of low pressure, Italy and Greece are largely fine, but there is another low on the way, arriving into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Well, it never fails to rouse, and that is, of course, the absolutely iconic Dambusters theme. And as you may remember, last month on this show, we told you about the campaign to save Easy Elsie, the last surviving Dambusters Lancaster from a Swedish scrap heap. But in a dismaying update, the government has said no. Now, despite calls for the wreck to be brought back home to Blighty, the bomber, which has been left lying in a Swedish bog now for over 80 years, is likely to be scrapped unless there could be a last-minute miracle at Christmas. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Roger Mackey, who's the son of a World War II Lancaster bomber navigator and leader of this campaign. Roger, it seemed astonishing to me that something of such historical importance, emotional importance, can be just simply left to rot for 80 years. Why on earth can't we bring Easy Elsie home?
Well, yes, it's very disappointing. I mean, I'd say I'm just a small part in a much rather larger project. I'm certainly not the leader, but very kind of you to say so. Yes, my father was the navigator on the plane which crashed in about 80 years ago now. I visited the site with him on his 80th birthday in 2002. And it would appear that the Swedish government want to rewild the site. In order to do that, they need to, or they not need to, but they want to remove all the wreckage. And it's not clear what's going to happen to that. It could just be scrapped. It would appear that the Swedish authorities aren't averse to the aircraft being moved, but the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency won't give permission for anybody to go on the site. There's plans afoot to helicopter the wreckage out, put on a lorry and bring back to Lincolnshire, where it will be based in a museum very near to where my father was based, in Woodhull Spa, near where 617 Squadron was based. And it's the Swedish government really that appear to be dragging their feet and not giving him permission, and there'll be some decision made in early January. I mean, I did write to my local MP, who very kindly forwarded a letter to the Ministry of Defence. I have the letter here, actually, Vernon Coker, who responded saying that, frankly, it was a bit of a wreck, difficult to bring back home, and they weren't interested. And so be it, really. And I think somebody, when I spoke to Nigel Farage when I was on previously, he very kindly offered to give any help or support he could. And somebody with his standing and influence, a letter targeted to the Swedish authorities, pleading our case would be tremendous. I mean, this is the only remaining wreckage of, not complete, but the only original wreckage of a 617 Lancaster, which is evocative of many things within the war. There was 55,000 people killed in Bomber Command, and it would be a shame for it just to be destroyed, where it could be brought back and used as a record of what many people sacrificed so much.
Roger Mackey, I think anybody watching the show will completely agree, and we'll try and do all we can to put some leverage on the environmentalists in Sweden. Isn't it ironic that the Greta Thunberg types might stand in the way of British history? I mean, it's astonishing, but there we go. They get the claws into everything. Roger Mackey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show tonight. Thank you very, very much for joining us. I get some reaction from my panel, Sir Ranald J. Walden, and, of course, Joe Phillips. Sir Ranald, let's come to you first. Easy Elsie deserves to come back to Blighty.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important that future generations understand the sacrifices and the challenges faced by previous generations, those people who fought for the freedoms that we too often take for granted. And, this is part of a broader trend, worryingly, in Britain today, that we don't seem to want to do that. The Imperial War Museum, for example, removed the Lord Ashcroft Gallery. I mean, these stories need to be told, and this is just another story that's so important, is remembered for future generations so that they remember the sacrifice that was given for them.
Joe Phillips, surely there's no argument against bringing it back.
No, although I'm quite curious as to why it has obviously been there for 80 years, as Roger said, that there's not apparently been an attempt to bring it back before, because you would have thought that people might have tried to either raise or if it is in such a state that it could be left there or
the Swedes were perfectly happy to have it for all these years until now they've decided they're not.
Yes, exactly. So, but, you know, it's not really down to our government, it's down to the Swedish government, as far as I understand, to allow permission to go onto the site.
Well, if we can give the Chagos Islands away, surely we can reclaim Easy LC
I
back.
think it just needs a campaign, but I think, you know, I think Ronald's absolutely right. These things are terribly important, and we are talking about war and being on a war footing on quite a regular basis. And if anybody wants to read about Lancaster bombers, they should read When We Were Kings by Sarah Winman.
Somebody who's always on a war footing is Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Well, State of the Nation is up next. Before we talk about what's on your menu, Sir Jacob, surely this wreckage deserves to rest easy in Blighty.
Or rest as a memorial in Sweden.
Exactly.
They did, in a way, it depends if, when it crashed, people died on it. I know that sometimes... Well, I know ships are protected, that if they have sunk, they're protected as wreckage. And I think there's something right about that, that they are a commemoration of the people who were killed in action. So I'd probably prefer it to stay in Sweden as a memorial there. And blast these boring environmentalists. Aren't they a pain in the neck?
And you have a show on tonight, Sir Jacob. Actually, we've got a quick writer reply. A spokesman for the MOD has told us this. The UK government has no plan to recover the Lancaster bombers located in Sweden. Any decisions about what will happen to the site and the wreckage are for the local authorities in Sweden. State of the Nation, Sir Jacob, is up next. Got a quick 30 seconds. What's on your menus?
OK, well, a taxi driver I had today told me that I wasn't being tough enough on the government, so I've got to make up for that. And I'm going to talk about unemployment. Every Labour government, bar the one in 1924, increases unemployment. This one's doing it in spades. It's dreadful.
OK, superb stuff. Thank you to my panel tonight, Sir Rano, Joe Phillips. And, of course, State of the Nation is up next with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'll be back. Actually, I'll have a day off tomorrow. We're going to see my son perform in his end-of-year performance. I'll see you on Thursday. And in the meantime, thanks to Faye, who's been the producer on tonight's show. So last shift with me together. You're a wonderful lady. Best of luck with your career. See you later. And State of the Nation is up next with Sir Jacob.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, after what has been a largely fine day for many of us, things are set to change through the next 24 hours, with some wet weather going to arrive in time for tomorrow. That's all due to a weather system that's currently out towards the west of us. But before this, we have a ridge of high pressure, and so relatively quiet weather across us through large chunks of the night. As a result, we're going to have a lot of dry weather, yes, but also quite a lot of clear skies, and with that we're going to see some mist and fog patches developing, particularly across central and eastern parts. They could be quite dense. Also worth noting that temperatures are going to drop a little bit lower than some recent nights, so a chillier start to the day tomorrow. Could even be a touch of frost around. So first thing tomorrow, a chilly start, yes, largely dry across central and southern parts of England and also across the east, but watch out for those fog patches. A different story towards the north and west, however. That front that I mentioned at the start, that will have spread its way in, and so we're going to see some fairly persistent and at times heavy rain across many places, and with all that wet weather the winds will be strengthening as well, so a blustery wet start to the day for most. Clinging on to the dry weather across the far east of England through much of the day. Elsewhere it's going to be pretty wet at times. The highest rainfall totals likely to build up over parts of South Wales and southwest England. Dartmoor, for example, could see 40 to 60 millimetres, enough to cause some disruption. Temperatures on paper are a few degrees above average for the time of year, but with the unsettled weather, well, it's not going to feel particularly pleasant. Then as we go into Thursday, there's more rain set to push its way in, a swathe of even heavier rain coming in from the south-southwest, so watch out for that, as it could cause some more disruption with the ground already so saturated. Friday for many actually looks like a largely fine end to the week, but a more changeable pattern into the weekend. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the greatest cash prize of the Great British Giveaway so far. A simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like, making 2026 your greatest year to date. That could get you that brand new car, extend and improve your home, take you away on that bucket list holiday, or just give you some peace of mind over the coming months. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
I commit this Labour government to nothing less than the abolition of long-term youth unemployment.
Unemployment has reached its highest level in 4 years, and young people are paying the price. Private sector jobs are disappearing, while public sector pay is booming, and businesses are saying hiring is no longer worth it. But is this by design? Is Labour hoping to make people utterly reliant on the state? Or is it simply the party of economic illiteracy? Also tonight.
There is a link between ethnicity, between race, between culture, that we identify that so that we can deal with it.
The Home Secretary says the rights of foreign sex offenders have been put before the safety of British women and girls, promising tougher deportations and the biggest ever crackdown on sexual violence. She says she shares the public's fury. But why hasn't Labour been saying this for the last decade? Will it deliver? Plus...
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth. Literally, they put words in my mouth.
President of the United States, Donald Trump, has launched a £7.4 billion defamation lawsuit against the BBC, accusing the broadcaster of misleading editing in a panorama documentary about the 6th of January Capitol riots, and is seeking at least £3 billion in damages. The BBC says it will defend the case despite apologising for an error of judgment. Meanwhile, talks on a £31 billion UK-US tech deal are reportedly stalled over trade disputes. Is the special relationship in special measures? Also, the British state and its institutions have been the envy of the world and commanded the loyalty of its people for centuries. What have we done right for all these decades and centuries? But today, is the state functioning as it should? A new paper from the Centre for a Better Britain explores the issue and why it matters. I'll be talking to the organisation's top man shortly. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale, and the journalist and broadcaster, Michael Crick. As always, let me know what you think. mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories as our UK police are stepping up armed patrols on the transport network and in other crowded places as they warn of an increased terror risk over the festive period. Senior officers from counter-terror policing and the British Transport Police have issued a joint call for vigilance following the recent attacks targeting the Jewish community in Manchester and in Australia, warning that mass gatherings over the Christmas and New Year period remain an attractive target for terrorists. That's as new details are emerging about the gunmen behind the massacre in Sydney. Indian police say 50-year-old Sajid Akram was originally from the southern city of Hyderabad and had limited contact with family there. Authorities in India say relatives were unaware of any radical beliefs or activities as Australian police continue to examine possible overseas links. Detectives are investigating claims that the two gunmen travelled to the Philippines weeks before the attack for what's being described as military-style training. 15 people were killed in Sunday's shooting. 9 are in a critical condition. The Prime Minister says the attack appears to have been motivated by Islamic State ideology. Donald Trump says he's suing the BBC, launching a multi-billion-dollar legal action over what he calls a doctored edit of his January the 6th speech. The US president says a Panorama documentary falsely made it appear he called for violence at the Capitol, accusing the broadcaster of defamation and misleading editing. The BBC apologised for giving a mistaken impression, but insists there's no basis for a defamation claim. In a statement, a spokesperson for the BBC said the broadcaster will defend the case. UK unemployment has risen to 5.1%, its highest level since early 2021. The ONS says young people are being hit the hardest, with unemployment among 18 to 24-year-olds jumping by 85,000. Elsewhere, the driver who ploughed into crowds at Liverpool's Premier League victory parade has been jailed for 21 years and 6 months. Paul Doyle injured 134 supporters after driving his car into fans. The court heard the 54-year-old lost his temper and acted in what a judge called inexplicable fury. Dashcam footage showed supporters thrown onto the bonnet and dragged beneath the car as Doyle shouted abuse and accelerated through closed streets. Doyle pleaded guilty to 31 offences, including attempting to cause grievous bodily harm to a 6-month-old baby. And in sport, Paris Saint-Germain have been ordered to pay former striker Kylian Mbappé £52.5 million in unpaid salary and bonuses by a French court. Mbappé had been seeking £231.5 million from his former club after the long-running dispute reached a Paris court in November. The European champions were countersuing the France captain for £211 million. The 26-year-old claimed the 9-figure sum as damages in response to a contract dispute and ill-treatment by the club. However, he was awarded just over a fifth of that amount in court today. The court recognised that PSG had failed to pay 3 months of his salary between April and June last year, as well as an ethics bonus and a signing bonus under his contract. It's believed the majority of the money awarded to Mbappé was bonuses rather than his salary. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, it's over to Jacob.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Unemployment has risen to 5.1%, the highest level in 4 years, and has been rising for 14 consecutive months. This time last year, unemployment stood at 4.3%, and those paying the highest price are young workers. In 3 months, unemployment among 18 to 24-year-olds rose by 85,000, the largest increase in 2 years. Redundancies have risen to their highest level since the pandemic, and private sector employment has been shrinking for more than a year. These outcomes did not happen by accident. Employers are telling us why they are so restrained in the face of uncertainty over taxation, rising national insurance costs, and mixed messages from the government ahead of both their budgets. Many firms stopped hiring new staff and others cut jobs because taking on new staff has become unaffordable. At the same time, public sector wages are rising at more than 7%, while private sector pay growth is slowing to under 4%. Resources, which are all created by the private sector, the public sector does not create wealth, are being directed towards expanding public sector employment, even as the private sector, the engine of job creation, contracts. This removes incentives to work and makes welfare a lifestyle choice. Tax and welfare system that weakens the incentive to work, high taxes making hiring harder, while increasing welfare spending risks trapping people outside the labour market altogether. It is killing the jobs market. Instead of encouraging the transition into work, the system discourages it. You know the story. £71,000 a year in the private sector to be enough to make up for benefits if you have 3 children. So the private sector suffers, and that's where wealth is created, and Labour's policies seem deliberately to be exacerbating the situation. Unsustainable increases in the minimum wage, leading businesses to warn that higher wage price workers can't be afforded, they can't be paid for, and it leads to inflation as well. And these are the result of political choices made in Downing Street. It is a choice made by Rachel Reeves and Sir Keir Starmer, and they're choices that misunderstand basic economics, ignore employer behaviour, and prioritise state employment and welfare over growth, enterprise and productivity. The result is a weaker economy, fewer opportunities, and a generation of young people being left behind. We are in an economic doom loop. As ever, let me know what you think. Mail at gbnews.com. But I'm now joined by my most pugnacious panel, the Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale, and the journalist and broadcaster, Michael Crick. Michael, this is just what Labour governments do, isn't it? Every single one, other than the one in 1924, which only lasted a few months, has left office with unemployment higher than when it came into office.
Well, a lot of the reasons behind this rise in unemployment, I mean, some of it is due to the government. I've criticised the government on this programme before. The employers' national insurance rise last year, for example, and the chaos surrounding the budget this autumn, and which left employers being cautious and postponing decisions and so on. That was not at all helpful. But there are other factors as well which are affecting, which are more long-term, like Brexit. I mean, remember, Jeremy Warner, the assistant editor of The Telegraph, this channel's favourite newspaper, said the other day that Brexit had been an unmitigated economic disaster.
Jeremy Warner's long-standing Remainer.
Well, nonetheless, he is from The Telegraph.
Well,
but he is right. It has been. It has been.
Newspaper.
And the British public are starting to realise this, and in British employers and business. Polls show that if we had most people now want to think it was a mistake, and we now want to go back into Europe.
Polls mainly showed that people wanted to vote to remain, and they didn't, did they? So I wouldn't believe